rock and come in. Baby, oh, baby, me say rock and come in.
Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Whitney and I'm here to provide you with natural hair content. So today I'm going to be following up off of my last video about hair porosity with other hair characteristics that we can look at when trying to maintain the health of our hair. So if you want to see more, stay tuned. If you haven't seen the last video, stop this video right now and go watch that one and then come back to this one. So I'm just going to be styling my hair as usual. I'm going to separate into 4 sections and apply my gel. I will be using the Eco Styler Argan Oil Gel to do my wash and go. Let's just get right into it. I'm going to start off with hair typing, and in basic terms, hair typing is basically how to determine your curl pattern, or you should more so the diameter of your curl. There are 4 different categories of hair patterns. You have the 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, and within each category there are subcategories that go from A to C. So if we start off with the type 1s, those are usually people that have straight hair, and as I said, there are subcategories, so they range from 1A to 1C, 1 being bone straight, whereas 1C having a little bit of a wave to it. Also, people that have type 1 hair do have fine strands, more so type 1A have more fine strands and they are more prone to breakage. They also have more of a hard time styling, or so. Also with type 1, natural oils tend to travel down the hair a lot more easily, and that is why a lot of people who have straight hair usually will wash their hair every few days because of those natural oils that are being produced, giving them usually that greasy look. Then moving on to type 2, which would be more of a wave. As I've said, there are the subcategories from A to C, and or I should say just in general, waves usually have more of an S pattern, and depending on if you're 2A, your wave pattern is not as defined as somebody who has a 2C. So if they have a 2C, that would usually mean that the wave starts closer to the root of their hair. So also, while I'm doing my hair, I will be using the Denman brush this time. So I will most probably experience quite a bit of shrinkage, which is okay, even though I'm not fond of it. But I will end up using the banding method to stretch my hair. So people who have a type 2C pattern, even B, will experience some frizz and as well as a bit of dryness in their hair. People who have type 2 hair also will be able to style their hair, and their hair kind of keeps the style a bit better than somebody who had type 1 hair pattern. So if we move on to type 3s, which would be the category that I fall under, you have type 3s that usually will have a bit of a natural shine, and the curl pattern will be sometimes an S pattern, but a more tightly coiled S pattern. So if you have a type 3A, your curls can be anywhere from the size of a marker or bigger, just to give you an idea of what a type 3A may look like. Then type 3B is what I would kind of classify my hair as. 3 hair usually has, or type 3B, I should say, usually has loose ringlets, and it is prone to frizz, as well as a bit of difficulty keeping a natural shine throughout your week of, like, let's say a wash and go or even a twist out. It does get dry very easily, but that does depend also on your porosity. And then you have your 3Cs, which is an even tighter ringlet, maybe the size of a pencil if you would like to compare it to something. And those curl patterns are also prone to frizz as well as dryness. And moving on to the 4s, well, the 4s are what they would say coils or kinky hair, and they usually vary from a S pattern to a Z pattern. They can be as tight as a corkscrew if you would like to compare it to anything, and they are very prone to frizz as well as breakage and shrinkage. So 4A is very dense in S patterns or even a Z pattern, and when you get to 4B, they are more of a Z pattern. And when you get to 4C, well, 4C, sometimes people will say there's not even a curl pattern that appears, but it's a very, very small Z if you want, or multiple Z's throughout the length of the hair. Also, people who have 4C are very, very prone to shrinkage, a lot of shrinkage. So 4Cs, you'll usually see their hair at, let's say for example, they have hair, when it's dry, it's chin length, but then if they stretch it, it's gonna reach, I don't know, like hip length, right? So very prone to shrinkage. Now, hair typing is not exactly, like I've said before in my previous video, something you want to focus on when you're trying to maintain the health of your hair. You're looking more so at the porosity, the density, and the texture of your hair. Well, if we move on to texture, texture would be, for example, the width of your curls. So, or how thick or thin an individual hair strand is. So somebody who has a very thin hair strand would be considered fine, having fine strands. And the thicker your strand, the stronger your hair usually. So one way that you can test the texture or try to figure out the texture of your hair would be to take a piece of sewing thread and compare one single hair strand to that sewing thread. So if your hair strand appears, or you can barely see it compared to the piece of thread, then that would mean you have fine strands. If your hair strand is about the same as the piece of thread, then you would have medium strands, and if your hair is much thicker than the strand, then that means you have a very thick strand or very coarse texture. And you also have another hair characteristic, which would be the density. So the density is the amount of hair strands you have on your head. So it can be low density, medium density, and high density. And so one way to test out the density of your hair is if it's dry. If you barely have to move your hair to see the scalp, that would mean you have low density. If you move your hair a little bit and then you're able to see your scalp, that would mean that you have medium density. And if it's very hard and you basically have to part your hair to see your scalp, then that would mean you have high density. And then we have our last hair characteristic that we look at, which would be elasticity. So in other words, shrinkage. So if you have a lot of shrinkage, it's not a bad thing. It just means that your hair is healthy. So those are the top characteristics that we look at when trying to maintain the health of our hair. More importantly, porosity, density, and texture. So if you know what hair type you are, what density you are, and what texture you are, comment down below. And if you're unsure, try out those tests. There are other tests that you can try out. You can also look them up on Google, and comment down below once you figure it out. Also, if you reach this far in my video, you should subscribe. If you haven't watched my previous video, go ahead and watch that and learn about the porosity of your hair if you're uncertain what that is. So I'm just gonna finish up my hair and I'll be back when I'm done applying the product. Alright y'all, so I'm done applying the product and I am going to diffuse since it is late, and I will most probably come back later to show you the final results. Also, one thing I want to mention about hair typing is that you can have different curl patterns throughout your whole head. So on one side you might have like a 3B, and then underneath you might have like 3C, or one side you might have 3A, 3B, 3C. So if you have multiple curl patterns, that's completely fine. It is something that is normal, and like I said, not something that you should really look at too hard when trying to maintain the health of your hair. Also, my hair is really shiny. I don't find it was this shiny the last time I used the argan oil eco styler, so we'll see how this turns out and if I have a lot of frizz or not. So yeah, I'll see you then. Alright y'all, so I'm back and these are my results. My curls are a little more defined than usual because I did use the Denman brush, and there is quite a bit of shine. I do have some frizz, and I did do the banding method to stretch my hair as well as fluff and pick my hair so that I had more volume because it was kind of flat. Separated some of the curls because they were so clumped together. That's one thing that happens when I use the Denman brush. My curls get very clumped together, so once they start to dry, or once they're fully dry, I will separate them, and that kind of reduces the frizz compared to if I were to do it when it was completely wet. And I do have frizz more so on the bottom since that's where I picked it out, and I usually get frizz in the front around around the front, the perimeter, you know what I'm saying, of my head. And yeah, because for some reason my curls just don't do what they do on the right side, and I do find that I have a bit of a looser curl pattern on the left side compared to the right side, and I have more density on the right side compared to the left side. So that is something normal, as I did mention previously. And if you do have that type of issue, it's not really an issue, it's just your hair and you gotta kind of live with it. So if you would like to see more of these type of videos, Let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.